Gossamer Ch.11. Synesthetes rarely sleep. No sprawled, snoozing heap for them. They are a restless herd. These dark creatures who contain within them the most profound of all fears, the hidden things, old guilt and failings that we will ourselves to forget. Their constant pawing and snorting is accompanied by an atmosphere of foul-smelling sweat, for they glisten with it. Their energy is boundless. They toss their heads and flare their nostrils, tasting the air, searching for the places where they will spew their loathsome holdings, waiting for deepest night, the time when infliction takes place. They are not bound by rules or limits, as the dream givers are. They prey on the most vulnerable. They have no mercy. And they were aware of the boy. They were making ready for the boy. There's that symbol again. Most ancient called a meeting. The dream givers gathered early in the evening, before dark fully fell, before they went out on their nightly work. A warning to you all, he announced. I dislike bringing this up. It is not something we like discussing, but I'm feeling some early warning signs, small tremors in the earth. I want you to be alert. A murmur rippled through the heap. Littlest one listened carefully. Around her, she heard the sound. The dream givers were saying the word under their breath. Synesthetes, synesthetes. They're convening, most ancient said. I believe they have a victim identified. They've been on the prowl. Prowl? Trooper asked. Trooper was a large, muscular dream giver, forceful and decisive. I'd say rampage is the word for it. I had to deal with one quite recently. It inflicted a terrible nightmare on a young man in my assigned house. Did a lot of damage. I've been doing remedial dreams ever since. I've had some trouble as well, another voice called. Littlest peered through the back of the heap to see who was speaking. It was Duwager, who's so precise always, speaking now in a clipped tone. I've been able to ward them off, but I've definitely felt some approaches. And I saw scorch marks on the walls of a bedroom. Scorch marks? Littlest whispered in a questioning voice to thin elderly, who was beside her. What are scorch marks? I'll explain later, he whispered back. Anyone else? Most ancient looked around. Some heads nodded. A few hands went up. Well, we've always had these individual forays, of course. Trooper, good work. You do deal with these. If any of you need help, feel free to call on Trooper for a little extra muscle. But what I want you all to be on the lookout for are signs of a pending group attack. I'm feeling a gathering starting, a horde. This happens only rarely. Over the years, occasionally, they have focused on one victim, someone particularly helpless. Then they mass and descend. Perhaps only the oldest of you here have ever experienced it. Anyone remember the last horde attack? He looked around. No one? Well, it's been a very long while. I don't mean to worry or alarm you, and I don't see it as imminent, but we must be on the lookout. Somewhere out there, they are beginning to sniff, to sense a victim. Let's be vigilant. Let's be on guard. Subdued, the dream givers rose from the heap and began to set out for their night of work. There were apprehensive murmurs among them. Littles could hear the whispered sounds. That meant some of them were still saying the name under their breath. Synesthete, she whispered to herself, testing the sound of it. But then Elderly looked down at her, shook his head in warning. He put his finger to his lips. Chastened and a little nervous, Littlest reached up, took his hand, and held tightly to it as they set out. Chapter 12. I can't stay in a house with no TV, he said again. He was standing beside the piano with his hands clenched. The dog nosed at his sneaker, but the boy didn't notice. The woman knelt beside him, though she knew already not to reach out with a touch. Earlier she had tried to put her arm around him, but he had flinched and pushed her away. You know, she said in a calm voice, there are a lot of other things to do. I'll read to you, or you can read to yourself. There are plenty of books. Some left over from my own childhood. The Bobbsey twins? I suppose that's more for girls. But there will be some book you'd like, I'm sure. He rolled his eyes. Get me a Game Boy then. If all you have are stupid books, he said. A what? She asked, laughing. I don't even know what that is. But if you like games, we can play games. Ever played Monopoly? I always lose, but I'm a pretty good sport. I have a Monopoly set in the cupboard over there, and Scrabble, and some others. I keep them for visiting children. I have a lot of grandnieces and grandnephews. I'm going to run away, he announced. Even if that door is locked, I know how to open it. I'm out of here. Listen, the woman said and tilted her head. Hear that? They could both hear the sound of the heavy rain that had started to fall, and in the distance, some rumbling of thunder. The door isn't locked. You can simply open it and walk through, she told him. But it's nasty weather outside, and I'd be worried about you, about where you would sleep and what you'd find to eat. Why don't you wait until morning? At least this evening you'll have a nice dinner and a warm bed. I need TV. Well, I can't provide that, I'm afraid. But I do have a meatloaf in the oven. He scowled. Do you have ketchup? He asked. She nodded. And ice cream for dessert. Do you have cards? Cards? You know, with A's and K's and Q's? Oh, yes, I do, actually. Do you know some card games? We could do that after dinner. Okay, he told her grudgingly. I'll stay tonight. We can play war.